I'm Chad Ruthermans,
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
and welcome to NOCLIP Pocket, always fresh. Today, we're going to be talking about Donut County, which was a game that was developed by Ben Esposito, published by Annapurna Interactive, and was released in 2018 on phone platforms, as well as on Windows, PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and then just recently on Android, which is weird that it took a while to port.
You also forgot Mac OS.
Oh, Macos?
Yeah, Windows, Mac OS, and Switch OS.
Yep. But yeah, Donut County is... every time we think about doing... We will browse just sort of like the internet and the shops and stuff, and occasionally something catches our eye, and I feel like 100% of the time that we naturally find something, it's one of these like mumblecore indie games.
Yeah.
Like there's something about this aesthetic that just really appeals to us for whatever reason. But I guess I want to not put this in a genre necessarily. It's kind of a puzzle game, but it is a game where you play as a hole in the ground, and you drop stuff into the hole, and the hole gets larger and allows you to drop bigger things in the hole.
Yeah, my first note is that I was thinking of this game as the NoClip coined term of a roll 'em up.
Yeah.
As in that it feels like it's inspired by Katamari. But I guess you could change that from a roll 'em up to a hole 'em up.
Okay, not bad. This definitely does give big Katamari vibes, as far as like kind of a lot of how it goes. The I won't say the narrative, but like mechanically and sort of visually, it's got a lot of that DNA in it.
Yeah, Katamari is much more chaotic, and this is much more chill.
Though, like, I don't know exactly where I want to land on this, like, because from a mechanical standpoint, this game isn't like all that interesting. Like, it's not it's not that I don't like the game or like playing it. It is enjoyable, but it's more of like a relaxing experience than it is anything else. And it's one of those games that we've talked about a couple of times, where the game feels like it spends a really long time on the basics, and by the time that the mechanics could become very interesting, that's when it lets off the gas and the game ends.
Yeah, it almost kind of felt like a sandwich to me, to use a dumb metaphor.
I accept no other kinds of metaphor.
Because like I think it's either the first or second level, and I think it's the first one. You are like outside of a house, and you collect things with a hole, and then the perspective shifts to like the side of the house, and then the back of the house and the other side. And I liked how the level felt like it had like a little, like it evolved or like it turned around, and there were several different screens. And that's something that doesn't come up in any of the other levels. Most of them are just one screen affairs, so I thought that was a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But then it brings it back at the end and does like this really cool like infiltration level where you're going from like room to room, and you have to bring items to open doors and shoot them back up and like all kinds of stuff. And it's like, I feel like that last level really shows the potential that the mechanics had, and the rest of the game doesn't utilize them.
Yeah. I get the impression that the way that this game was designed was like with that initial first couple of levels concept, where it's just like you pick stuff up, make the hole bigger. And to me, like, that is like a relaxing experience. Like it's got that same sort of like cathartic energy that like clearing lines in Tetris does.
Yeah, it's just satisfying to do.
Yeah, and I love it, honestly, but like the fact that it does dip into it, like it almost does the game a slight disservice, because even though the more complicated puzzles were my favorite parts of the game, it also made me realize how cool the more extreme version of this could have been.
Yeah, it feels like, yeah, kind of like you're getting at, like, it sits somewhere in the middle where, like, it should have leaned one way or the other and been, like, just more of, like, a veg out and suck things into this whole kind of game, or it should have, like, pushed the, like, puzzly and level design side of things further than it did.
Yeah. And that's not to diminish how good I think that this game genuinely is. Like, I think that for what, like, a simplistic concept is, they got to focus in on it and kind of present this engaging little thing with this accompanying narrative, which I think is, like, the main real selling point. Like, that's kind of what the game is about, and the whole part is just, like, that's what you do to progress in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those indie games where it's very charming. Like I have in my notes here that the raccoon character, BK, who I guess is technically the main character, but I thought of the girl who's his friend as the main character for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't really know why, but you are technically playing as the raccoon who's moving the hole around everywhere. But I have written down that he feels like a character written by you.
Well, I didn't get that impression, which probably means that it's correct.
It just feels like this... he's like a very lazy character who is always like denying like responsibility for stuff. And it just like felt like if you wrote an indie game character, like that's what it would end up like.
I do want to talk about the writing in this game, but you bring up like a really good point, is that I'm super funny and great and would write a good character.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, no, I agree with you in that I view Mira to be the main character of the game as well. I think that while BK is our like playable protagonist, I think that Mira is the main character because she's a human. There really aren't many in the game, and so she's the most relatable of the characters, and like her perspective is the one that we're kind of supposed to be siding with.
She's like the lens through which BK's actions are being viewed through.
Yeah, I think that all in all, I think it is fair and correct to say that Mira is the main character.
Yeah, and I think she's the one in control when you're doing like the final boss and stuff like that. So
yeah, that is true and accurate.
Just as I wrote it.
This is what
you
we
pull
strive
off a
for.
mask and you're actually Ben Esposito.
This is an interview now. What's up? Okay, so on the topic of writing and this game's writing, I want to know how you pronounce LOL.
I say lol in my head.
Yeah, so do I.
I feel like it's like just a thing with our friend group that like we do that. And I imagine plenty of other people do too, but it's not like a universal thing.
I feel like I thought a similar thing because people don't go around in public saying lol.
Except us.
Well, when we're with each other, you know? So, like, if somebody does something that isn't funny, but we want to acknowledge it as, like, being very stupid or something, we will say lol out loud.
It's like rolling your eyes with your mouth.
Exactly. And I don't think that... it's probably not uncommon. It's probably a thing that lots of people do behind closed doors. Because you don't like go to a restaurant and are like, what do you want to eat? It's like, I'll have a basket of fries, lol.
Big yeet.
Big yeet. Yeah, F's in the chat. Easy clap, forehead. If you would be justifiably thrown out of that restaurant. But the fact that it's so prevalent in this game and they just do it all, like, I can't imagine them intending this to be read entirely as text speak, because there is a separation between texts and the actual conversations people are having, but people still say lol and in that way. And they also like OMG is in there, but like that's more of a common thing for people to spell out while talking. And it was just, it's very like, to me, it was jarring, but I think only because I was way over analytical of like what the fuck it meant in the game.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like you're on to something, though. Like, I saw something on the internet somewhere that was like, Gen Z and boomers hate that millennials always say LOL. And I was like, I don't know, maybe that is like a thing for like people close to our age, that we overuse that. And it's worked its way into this game because the developer's probably close to our age.
That's probably true, yeah. Yeah, and I also, most of the people who are younger than me that I talk to have gravitated toward LMAO. Or LMAO.
I like LMAO.
LMAO is how I say that.
I've never tried to say that one as a word.
LMAO, I think, is also generally accepted pronunciation for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've just been a LOL guy for my whole. I've been a real LOL cat.
We belong to LOLs Anonymous.
Mm-hmm. We gotta come back from our fucking boomer chat podcast that we're having right now.
We're getting old, okay?
But yeah, I think that is like, while we are probably making more of a deal about it than it needs to be, I do think that this type of dialogue shows sort of like a movement from, I mean, this game came out in 2018, so it's not even like it's a fresh thing necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But a movement toward like a writing style that is more, less formalized. Like I've noticed this in a couple of games, and I think that we've pointed it out often when it shows up.
Yeah, it makes me think of it's just one character in that game, but Celeste with Theo is kind of this sort of thing. Like I don't even know if you would call it a commentary, but like it's just like a character that's very like rooted in like lingo and slang. And
Super Brothers, which is even older than this game is, by a lot, actually. That game came out in like 2012 or something.
Yeah.
That game uses dialogue in this manner, and I feel like it was a really kind of strange standout example at the time, and also it's intended to sort of like butt against the aesthetic of the game, which has this sort of like weird pseudo fantasy thing
in that game for sure.
Yeah, and this game is obviously taking it a lot more seriously on its face. Like, nothing about the game makes it seem like they are using this dialect in like an ironic way.
Yeah, it almost does kind of feel, in certain contexts, feel like an evolution of like a Fellow Kids sort of thing, or like an Adult Swim kind of like uncanny trying to insert emoticon type shortening of words and slang and lingo in places where it doesn't belong.
Right.
And it does feel like it's slowly kind of wormed its way into like just the way people actually talk in real life now.
Right. Which ends up making this game feel more realistic or like true to life in its dialogue than I think I would have thought when the game came out, or potentially even more recently than that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was interesting, and maybe it is just me, like, my slowly aging brain really felt like it was out of place when I first saw it, but by the end of the game it feels very natural.
Mm-hmm.
And the writing, I think, is one of the strengths of this game. I think that both the writing in the Trashopedia and the dialogue between characters is genuinely really funny. I don't know. I think that I would highlight the writing of this game as like one of its unique strengths.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing the game made you think about, the way it used dialogue. One thing it made me think about, and you kind of touched on it at the beginning, is this isn't a specific criticism against this game, nor is it really intended as a specific criticism in general, but it's just something the game made me think about, which is what like unique air quotes around this indie game art styles, because I almost kind of felt like this about like Goose Game as well. Like, it almost feels like you could have taken a computer, thrown all the indie games that have come out in the past 5 years into it, and it would have spit this art style out as like appealing indie game art style, like 53B.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I really have to say about it, but like I felt like a bubble popped for me, and I'm like, am I getting like sick of this like cell shady, cartoony, like simplified detail kind of indie art style?
Yeah, and
I don't think the answer is yes. Like I think I've just reached a level of hyper awareness of it.
Mm-hmm. I recently played Going Under, and it also has a really similar art style to this, and it is something that is definitely getting more prevalent. I am disconnected enough from like what the fuck anything in the art world is or means that I couldn't say for sure, but I do wonder if there's a connecting thread, if there's like something about this art style that's very simple to make, or if like it's just a popular style of art. Like I don't know what the actual
I think it's a bit of
is.
both, and I think you see that with like pixel art as well. Like I think I reached a similar point like this with pixel art where I felt like I was kind of sick of it for a little bit, but then you just kind of go back to being okay with it again. Just like things hit like saturation points,
Yeah. I read an anonymous fucking internet user's defense of pixel art that I thought was pretty strong. Basically saying like making 2D graphics is obviously easier than making 3D graphics, and pixel art allows you to make like a sprite with a high level of detail without it being incredibly hard, difficult, or even expensive to do.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to animate pixel art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have like basically joints all over the place. So yeah, it's I feel like a lot of it comes from ease of use.
Yeah,
but I agree that it does appear to be just everywhere now.
It becomes a little bit popular because of ease of use, and then people latch on, like grow an attachment to it, and then it becomes more popular. Like it's multiple things feed into each other.
Yeah, I want to compare it to like an art movement, because I feel like it reminds me of a certain aesthetic, but the only art movement that I know the name of is Art Deco, and I don't think that's the one.
Dadaism.
Yeah.
Impressionism.
These are all words I've heard before.
Pop art.
Pop art is the one that sounds like it would be most correct. But I don't know.
No, I mean, it wouldn't fit into any that I could really think of.
Mm-hmm.
Just call it postmodern.
Yeah. It's postmodern. You're so postmodern. Let's move on to things that I have words to talk about. How do you feel about the actual story, like the narrative of the game?
It's very... I feel like this is just like a say nothing buzzword that I already said earlier, but like I just found it to be charming. This game's very short, and so I just kind of like plopped down on the couch and just played through it. And it's a fun little, as we said, funny narrative, and it's like a little bit absurd with like this raccoon tycoon. Just has his business where he deploys all these holes to people through this app to just suck everything up and collect all the trash. And then at the end, you like infiltrate his business and you stop him. So it's like just a cute little story to as something to rest the mechanics on, and I think it works. Like it's pleasant. The underground like cave area where everyone's sitting around the bonfire is you don't see it very much, but the little time it is you're in those cutscenes, it's surprisingly like atmospheric. I think it feels like kind of cozy. But yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much covers everything that I was gonna say. My initial thought on it was like the game is very short, but the story is somehow like even shorter than that, because like if you boil down 90% of the game is just them explaining how BK trashed each of their houses.
Right.
And then in the end, you go to the Raccoon King, Trash King is what it is, into his like little facility, and you trash it too. So that is kind of like the gist of it, and it has a very sort of like parable style message of like your friends are important and you should consider
don't let them
their
be
feelings.
trash.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's solid. And it was mostly like a delivery vehicle for the dialogue.
Yeah,
so
it feels appropriate for the little world that they created and like for the length of the game. Like it pulls its weight. Like it does what it needs to for the game. Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely wouldn't be half as good without it, I don't think. Something like Katamari has a lot less of a story, but it works because it leans into like how fucking weird it is.
Yeah.
This needs, I think, a little bit stronger of a story to carry it, and it does.
It just has it.
Yeah. But you mentioned just now how the game is short, and we talk about the length of games, especially here on Pocket, quite a bit. And this is like we usually come down on the positive side. Like we like a short game, and we can appreciate one that's short, and feel like we got our money's worth and all that. And while I feel like I got my money's worth from this game, it's not like a value judgment here, but I do feel like it's a little short for what it offers. I feel like, because like we were talking about with like that last level, feels like it really showcases like what the mechanics can do. So it doesn't really feel like the concept gets fully realized, and as a result, it leaves you like wanting more. Like it feels like it left stuff on the table, and you kind of wish it was a bit longer.
Yeah, I think that probably the fact that this was primarily developed by like one dude is probably the reason why it is so short. But what I want from this game is I actually kind of like Donut County on its own as like a solid 4 hour thing. But then I would love to see the Monument Valley treatment where this gets like a weird one-off expansion pack. And then I guess potentially a sequel. I always forget Monument Valley 2 exists.
Yeah.
So maybe not exactly the same. But if it had like an expansion that took took the focus off of the dialogue and the narrative and saw where they could go with the mechanics just as an experimental thing, I would adore that.
Like just like challenge levels or something.
Because we talked a little bit about the mechanics and like how simplistic they are, but you mentioned like the catapult. I think is pretty huge, considering there are just certain items that you can pick up and then throw. And it lends a lot of depth to the puzzles and stuff.
Yeah, and you have a couple of other one-off things like filling the hole with water and like shooting fireworks up out of it, or like dropping like a piece of coal in and then like catching it on fire and stuff. And they only really get used in like one level each. And then it's not till that last level that it brings them all back and actually like uses them together. And yeah, it feels like there's a lot you could do with that, as illustrated by that final level. Yeah,
and that the puzzle where it brings them back is very like the fact that the water is there is very inconsequential. Really, like you just have to fill it up in order to start a timed rotation.
Right.
So it is like. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that could be used in combination. The catapult itself is pretty limited as well, because like they will literally just take it away from you if you don't need to use it.
Right.
So there are definitely some things that I think could have been expanded upon. But the reason that we feel that way is because it was such a good time using them.
Yeah.
Like I think of the frog level where you send the frog up and it eats the flies and it gets like bigger, and so it grows your hole bigger, and also it can like weigh stuff down because it's heavier. I fucking loved that. I thought that was great. Similarly, shooting the raccoons up and having them latch onto things is a cool mechanic.
And then, like, you catch the rabbits and then they multiply in the hole, which is very funny. And there was like the one where you made like soup.
Yeah.
Like, you had to collect ingredients
and
in
avoid
the whole...
the cockroach from getting into the soup.
So yeah, there's some clever ideas in there.
For sure. And yeah, I would love to see that expanded on.
Yeah, it's like they don't feel like they get fleshed out. They just kind of feel like little novelties as it is now.
I have one other thing.
Okay.
I don't know if you
Hit
have
me.
other things.
No, we pretty thoroughly burned through my stuff.
All right.
They all went in the hole.
They all went. They're deep underground now.
Mm-hmm.
They're way down in the hole.
Are you done?
No. Okay, yes. I did want to mention the music before we close it out, as is tradition.
Classic.
Because I feel like if I had played this game 10 years ago, I would have thought that this soundtrack was like awesome, like super super good, and like I would hold it up as like a standout example of a cool soundtrack. And that is not to detract from this being a cool soundtrack. I think that generally speaking, soundtracks in indie games are so consistently cool across the board that this no longer stands out as much. But I think it is a good, like, chill and also appropriately, like, humorously over the top at times.
Yeah.
And I think that they kind of nailed a balance in that. And it was enjoyable, and it was something that I would always notice, like what tone the soundtrack was kind of bringing along to each level and to each screen that you were on. But it just this didn't floor me because I need blood splattered all over my face in order to keep me from yawning. So,
yeah, I think you're right. At least, like, I relate to that. Because, yeah, there is something... I remember enjoying the music while I was playing it, but, like, I can't remember what any of the songs sound like. Like, I think... to preview to my final thoughts, I feel like, yeah, like, I maybe have just hit a level of, like, saturation of, like, this sort of style of quirky indie game where things are starting to run together.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
because like
not trying to take anything away from the game, but
yeah, it would be bad for me to say that I didn't like the soundtrack because it is good on par with lots of other things that are good, but it is like a chill indie folky soundtrack, and I did enjoy it. And like if somebody put it on, like most likely like a poppy old vinyl and just chilled out and probably like lit up a bowl, I would be like, this is normal, and I wouldn't think anything of it at all. But now just thinking about it, like I also don't really like, I don't have those tunes stuck in my head. And, like, we're coming off the back of stuff like Sayonara Wild Hearts, which obviously was focused around its soundtrack, but, like, absolutely blew me away in comparison. It's just like, yeah, I really like this, but I didn't love it completely. I don't know. This feels, like, unfair now that I'm talking.
Yeah.
Do we have fallen in a hole thoughts?
My fallen in a hole thoughts are going to just launch off of what we were just talking about here. Like, this is a good game, but I think it's something that illustrates like how much more competitive the indie game space is now. Because I feel like something like this, and I brought up Goose Game earlier. I think like I had similar opinions on that. Where like if these games had come out like 5 years ago, I feel like they would have been a lot more popular and got these. I mean, they were still popular, but I feel like they would have been like those big indie titles if they had come out longer ago, because they would have stood out more. Yeah, so it's like a weird phenomenon, I think, that we're like kind of starting to settle into. But I mean, yeah, like as I think I was getting at earlier, like I said, I kind of hit a point where like I was a little bit sick of pixel art, but like you kind of like grow past those things and you just kind of accept their place.
Yeah.
In the game space, I guess. But yeah, this game is very charming. The moving the hole around and sucking things into it is super satisfying. It feels good in response of the move the hole around. I actually think it has a little bit of like a delay to it, so it actually feels like you're controlling someone controlling the hole. Because that is what is happening in the game. I think they tuned that really well. So really, really satisfying to play. It's funny. It's charming. I like the end credits where you fly the drone through it.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, and it's just leaves you wanting a little bit more. Like, yeah, as you said, I think it feels like it's begging for like an expansion, or some kind of or a sequel or something like that. Because it just feels like there's more here on the table to go back to. So those are my fallen in a hole thoughts.
Yep. I spent a lot more time of that listening to you than I normally do and trying to like compose my own final thoughts.
It's good to know that you don't usually listen to me.
Yeah, I just like to sort of glaze over. Get it? Donuts?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually do agree with the majority of that, though. I think to combine what you were thinking along with the old adage is it's better to leave someone wanting more, and this game definitely does do that. It did not... we did not come in and go, I was sick of playing this game by the end of it, and that's a positive thing. The biggest points that we made, I think, that I would like to like stick to as being my final thoughts on it are, I do wish that the mechanics had a little bit more complication even outside of the main story, like something added on, or just like little challenges outside, whatever it is. Just because I found the controls themselves to be so enjoyable and like such a cool, relaxing thing to do that I just wanted to do more of it and use a little bit more of my brain for it. But I really love the writing. I thought this game was genuinely really funny, and like all the characters had like their own little quirks and stuff, and were cool to sort of like, because you got both the character as them in the hole, and then you got to go see what their like house was like. It allowed them to sort of like theme the levels and give the characters just a little bit more personality to play with. And in the end, that's kind of what I take away. This was a fun, cool game that was very short, and I would recommend it to people who liked all of those games that we've talked about in the sort of twee indie sphere. I think this is like a solid entry and one that a lot of people could probably enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Telling Lies, which is the follow-up game from the developer of Her Story. And if you listen to Her Story, or in fact, our awards episode from last year, or the beginning of this year,
mm-hmm.
You would probably be thinking, I wonder why they haven't done this game yet, because I'm so like deeply in love with Her Story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we are, suckers.
We like to pace these things out.
Yeah, gonna make them. But I didn't even play it when it came out. I'm a
You're just a great big poser.
Yeah, I'm not a true fan. Until
Chad's canceled.
Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com. There you can find, I don't know where that tone came from. There you can find links to all of our old episodes, including the ones that we did on Untitled Goose Game, Or like Sayonara Wild Hearts, I also talked about.
A short hike.
Short Hike was very similar as well. And links to our YouTube, our Twitter, our email, and the Discord, where you can talk to us about games and give us suggestions on what to play next. Fall on that like button.
See that subscribe button? Throw it in the hole.
Yep. Don't subscribe. You drive me glazed. What does that even fucking mean?